Hey, this is Ramon, channel Alpha 4, and no, you're not seeing things. My camera is sideways. Chapter 2, Revelation. Write to the angel of the church in Ephesus and say, here is the message of the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, and who lives surrounded by the 7 golden lampstands. I know all about you, how hard you work and how much you put up with. I know you cannot stand wicked men, and how you tested the impostors who called themselves apostles and proved they were liars. I know too that you have patience and have suffered for my name without getting tired. Nevertheless, I have this complaint to make. You have less love now than you used to. Think where you were before you fell. Repent and do as you used to at first, or else, if you will not repent, I shall come to you and take your lampstand from its place. It is in your favor, nevertheless, that you loathe, as I do, what the Nicolaitans are doing. If anyone has ears to hear, let him listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Those who prove victorious, I will feed them from the tree of life, set in God's paradise. Now, let's talk about this letter. So this is a letter to Ephesus. Ephesus is the capital, in a way, of the Asia Minor territories of Rome. It is the trade capital, it is the political capital, it's also the religious hub of this part of Rome. Some notes and commentaries also mention worship of Artemis, although I'm not sure if that's actually true. I know there is a very famous statue of Artemis that's depicted there, but that image of Artemis is not actually Artemis, it's an actual different goddess, and I'm not sure if it's from the same time period. It's a very famous one, where she has like 100 breasts or something like that, which is not the traditional form that Artemis would take. The other thing is that it mentions angels here. Well, angels is actually code word for bishop. Now, the bishops of this time are part of the 70 or the 72 or the 77, depending on which tradition you look at. These are the 72 apostles that are 72 disciples who, after the death of Jesus, in the book of Acts, get tasked with founding churches. My cat is scratching something. Anyway, also something interesting with this one is that the church in Ephesus was actually founded by Paul, but it didn't actually stay a Pauline church, it became a Johannine church. And this letter would have been written to either Timothy or one of the other disciples or apostles at this time. So it's really interesting that this bishop is a very famous person. There's going to be another one that I think is Polycarp. So these people who are being written to, you can read what they have written or what they think about what's going on. And then we get to the second church, Smyrna. Write to the angel of the church in Smyrna and say, here is the message of the first and the last, who was dead and has come to life again. I know the trials you have had and how poor you are, though you are rich, and the slanderous accusations that have been made by the people who profess to be Jews, but are really members of the synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of the sufferings that are coming to you. I tell you, the devil is going to send some of you to prison to test you, and you must face an ordeal for 10 days, even if you have to die. Keep faithful, and I will give you the crown of life for your prize. If anyone has ears to hear, let him listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. For those who prove victorious, there is nothing to be afraid of in the second death. So there's some interesting stuff going on here with this one. So you're going to see 10 days. Well, 10 days has multiple meanings. For one thing, there was a cultic practice that took 10 days to do. So this could have been a slight against this 10-day ritual. It's also a reference to Daniel, who had to go 10 days without eating meat sacrificed to an idol, as this seems to be the biggest complaint that this John is going to have against some of these churches, is that they're eating meat sacrificed to idols. They're going to compare it to infidelity. Basically, the idea here is that worship is a kind of marital thing, marital relationship, and that worshiping other gods or idol worship or anything like that would be a type of infidelity. This one is going to have the very famous phrase, synagogue of Satan. Now, that's not actually the best translation, and there's actually different wordings that can even fit there. There's a different demon or evil spirit that can actually be inserted there. Synagogue here just means like church or gathering or group. So when it's saying synagogue of Satan, it's not an anti-Jewish thing. I know that a lot of people would twist this verse into being an anti-Jewish thing. What it's saying here is that the true Jews are the Jewish people who believe in Jesus, who accept the Messiah as their Christ. Those are the true Jews. So it's not an anti-Jewish statement. It's actually saying that the way to understand someone who's truly in the covenant is to see someone who believes in Jesus Christ. I know that seems very confusing for us in looking back and seeing it through Christendom. Our view of this has been slightly warped by time. In this time period, to be a Jew or a Christian was synonymous. And it's actually at exactly this time during Revelation when these two theologies, when this one religion is becoming two. It's becoming Christianity and Judaism. And it's a struggle, and that's what this is kind of covering. All right, now let's continue on. Write to the angel of the church in Pergamum and say, here is the message of the one who has the sharp sword, double-edged. I know where you live, in the place where Satan is enthroned, and that you still hold firmly to my name, and did not disown your faith in me, even when my faithful witness Antipas was killed in your own town where Satan lives. Nevertheless, I have one or two complaints to make. Some of you are followers of Balaam, who taught Balak to set a trap for the Israelites so that they committed adultery by eating food that had been sacrificed to idols. And among you, too, there are some as bad who accept what the Nicolaitans teach. You must repent, or I shall soon come to you and attack these people with the sword out of my mouth. If anyone has ears to hear, let him listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. To those who prove victorious, I will give the hidden manna and a white stone, a stone with a new name written on it, known only to the man who receives it. Now, there's a lot in this one, so I'm not going to be able to cover everything. I'd also like to go back to something that I said in a previous video about the menorah and about the Babylonians are the Assyrians being depicted carrying it out of the temple. It might have actually been Roman soldiers who were depicted taking it out of the temple. It's been a while since I've looked at that image. But here's another one. So, like I said earlier, you talk about Ephesus and you're thinking about those the cults that are there. Well, here in this one, it's talking about the statue of Zeus that's in the same area. So it's all these cities. I mean, they're towns to us now, but all these cities are within 50 miles of each other. And the way the story goes is kind of a clockwise motion, and it's each area has its own problem. But it's more than that. It's more than just the metaphor that's being talked about here. You got the sharp sword, the sword of truth, the word that cuts both ways. You have mention of a martyr, which means a witness. You have Satan being mentioned here. And again, Satan doesn't mean the devil or Lucifer or any of that here. It's witness versus witness. So Satan is the witness that tests human loyalty to God. That's what he was in the Old Testament. But now Satan has taken on this new role, this new connotation of the tempter of man, the tempter of Jesus. Now Satan has become something different. And you're going to see that as this story continues on, that the metaphors here are going to have deep layered meanings. You're going to see Balaam, okay? You're going to see the Nicolaitans. You're going to see all these references to other characters in the Bible, but they're not direct references. And I believe in the next section we're going to talk about, you'll see that when it says a woman, it's actually talking about probably a man. And when it's talking about an ancient figure, it's talking about a new figure, a new person who's risen up and for the writer represents this figure, this type of person. And this type of person, it's interesting that it can also be read to be talking or speaking against the Pauline teachings. Because here he's very strictly talking about how we should not be eating the meat of idols. Where Paul was kind of like, who cares? It's just meat. It doesn't mean anything. It's only if it's going to cause scandal that it'd be a problem. And he's speaking to churches that were founded by Paul, but that have now become Johannian. So there's an interesting political thread being sown in this book. And yet we would argue that there is no contradiction as a Christian, as Catholics. There's no contradiction between this book and Paul's writings. And yet here, it could be seen, if you're not looking through biblical eyes, as a political letter against some of Paul's inclinations or teachings. So there's something going on here that's very rich and very deep, that if you just think the story is just a simple metaphor for one thing, or just talking about one time period, you're missing out on the context of this amazing book. Write to the angel of the church in Thyatira and say, here is the message of the Son of God, who has eyes like a burning flame and feet like bronze. I know all about you and about how charitable you are. I know your faith and devotion and how much you put up with. And I know how you are still making progress. Nevertheless, I have a complaint to make. You are encouraging the woman Jezebel, who claims to be a prophetess. And by her teaching, she is luring my servants away to commit the adultery of eating food which has been sacrificed to idols. I have given her time to reform, but she is not willing to change her adulterous life. Now I am consigning her to bed, and all her partners in adultery to troubles that will test them severely. unless they repent of their practices. And I will see that her children die, so that all the churches realize, and that it is I who search heart and loins, and give each one of you what your behavior deserves. But on the rest of you in Thyatira, all of you who have not accepted this teaching or learnt the secrets of Satan, as they are called, I am not laying any special duty, but hold firmly on to what you already have until I come. To those who prove victorious and keep working for me until the end, I will give the authority over the pagans, which I myself have been given by my Father, to rule them with an iron scepter and shatter them like earthenware. And I will give him the morning star. If anyone has ears to hear, let him listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Now, morning star here is the big phrase that's going to pop out to us. Well, morning star is the star is the planet Venus. And on top of that, morning star here doesn't mean Lucifer or Satan like it does in movies. Morning star here means Jesus. It's a reference to Jesus. Okay? And more than that, notice how this one, and it breaks here to another chapter, even though, again, and originally there's no chapter breaks in the original version. But it breaks here to another chapter. And it does so perfectly, because this kind of ties up what the other letters we've already read are talking about. You have the prophetess Jezebel. Well, it's not really a prophetess. It's probably a male preacher. It's probably someone in the Christian community leading them into sin. It's possibly a rabbi, possibly a bishop, that they themselves are speaking against the church, and in this first heresy, or in this heresy that they're creating, they have followers, and those are her children. But it's not an actual woman, it's the man. So the insult here is that this man is very womanly, and he's seducing all these new followers, and in turn, the people who they convert are going to be punished unless they turn away and change their ways. So it's very interesting, and I enjoy it very much. I'm a fan of the Book of Revelation. I am. The first time I read it, I didn't know any of this stuff, okay? So I've read it many times, I've studied it, and I did a lot of studying before I do each one of these videos. I read up on a lot of stuff. By the way, this time we're going with the CTS New Catholic Bible. Hope you enjoyed this reading. Next time we're either going to be doing the Douay-Rheims, or we're going to be doing the King James. I'm not really sure, haven't decided yet. Anyway, peace, like, and subscribe. I hope you all are enjoying this video series. Please comment down below. Let's have a discussion. Share this video. Let's have a discussion about Revelation. Get comments down here. Like, start talking. Like, I don't care if you don't agree with me. Start commenting. Let's really, really make this series go out with a bang, and let's enjoy that we get to speak about the Bible openly, and we don't have to agree with each other. Peace, like, and subscribe. I love you all. Have a good night.